of Morning Glory. Theo Usherwood's here. We've got some politics to talk about now. That's enough with Gregg Wallace. And I've got some very good messages coming through. One from Kate, who says, Kate here from Shrewsbury. Has Gregg Wallace got the same PR firm as Prince Andrew? You might wonder about that. Let's get a voice note from James.
Going to have a little rant now regarding the illegal immigration. Why do I bother going to work, Mike? I have to work 2 jobs now. And these people coming on these boats illegally, you try and do that in China and see what happens. I'm sick of it, Mike. All the money I do earn, they get their labour, they get their sticky little fingers over it. Sod off, just turn the boats round. It's not controversial. They're coming here illegally. It's not rocket science. Anyway, mate, cheers, Mike. Have a good one.
James, thank you very much indeed. See, people are getting fed up to the back teeth of it. It's perfectly natural for James to speak the way he does and to say the things he says, because people who do work for a living, particularly those like James struggling to make ends meet because of the prices of everything going up, you know, 2 jobs, gets taxed, sees all these people. I think there's some ludicrous figure, which I'm about to tell you and reveal to you, about the number of migrant hotels which are currently in use. It's absolutely extraordinary. 220 asylum hotels in operation, despite Labour vowing to end their use. It's costing £8 million a day, and yet the numbers keep growing. I mean, and yesterday Pat McFadden was doing all the rounds, and people always say whenever Pat McFadden gets wheeled out, he's got some very highfalutin title, but he's effectively the real Deputy Prime Minister, that there's a problem. And he's saying we're not going to set any targets on migration.
Well, as well, they might not set targets on net migration because they don't want to get caught having missed those targets on net migration. And that's, you know, and Keir Starmer now we learn there's going to be nothing in here in terms of cutting net migration. They said they would you know, stop using hotels. Actually, the number of hotels under Labour being used has gone up.
Right. Why is it that these are the only people? If you had friends or family who said something, and I'm going to do this on Saturday, and then they did the complete opposite of what they said they were going to do, you wouldn't be friends with them for long, would you? Or you went to a shop and you go, how much is these pair of shoes? Oh, they're £50. OK, when you get to pay for them, they're £100. Yes. You'd go, sorry, you told me they were 50.
Yes.
Well, circumstances have changed since you walked from over there to over there. You know,
and the reason, you know, I think you're right, and the voters, you know, whether it's your friend, or whether you're with a shopkeeper, voters are going to turn around and say, well, I voted for you last time, I'm not going to vote for you this time because you didn't say what you were going to do last time. You didn't actually deliver on that, and actually 5 months into government, you're not prepared to keep that same target. You know, Keir Starmer in the run-up to the election said that he would make the UK the fastest growing economy in the G7.
Yeah, now he doesn't think he can do that.
Now he's going to sideline that policy. We learn in the Daily Telegraph this morning. That policy isn't going to make the cut. And of course, the reason he doesn't want to do that is that if he fails to do that over the next 4 years or so, then he'll get punished at the
And have you noticed, by the way, and I have to remind everyone of the fact that last time you were here, we were sitting here exactly where we are now when Louise Haigh decided that she was going to resign her job as Transport Secretary. It now says that they've changed their mission statement. They used to just say change, didn't they? Now it's planned for change. Well, that's different to change, isn't it? That means it's not a change. You're just planning to have a change.
So you buy yourself a bit more, in their words, you'll buy yourself a bit...
They think people are stupid. I mean, seriously.
They buy themselves a bit more time so that when people look round and they go, actually, you know what, nothing's changed.
No, so
we're planning for the change.
Planning for the change. But the trouble is, something has changed. The economy's gone down through the gurgler because apart from anything else, it looks as though something like 125,000 jobs are now going to be the cost of Rachel Reeves's useless budget.
Yes, and if you look at those targets that they are talking about, they're going to try and increase the number of young children deemed, quote, ready to start school from 60% to 75%.
What does that even mean?
What is that exactly? Right. How are you going to determine, how are the government going to determine, well, little Jimmy over there, he's ready to start school, but Tommy, no, Tommy's definitely not ready to start school. And then you're going to somehow include that in some government statistics to prove that
my favourite target of the day is the one on the front page of the Times. Labour NHS target will make A&E waits worse. They're saying basically NHS bosses, and of course they always warn this, don't they? They've warned that vital services will be cut back and A&E departments risk being turned into war zones to hit a target for routine operations. But the target is pathetic, you know? They're calling it in the Times one of the most challenging goals. Starmer will promise that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations. I mean, that's 5 years away.
Yes, and you're still going to have to wait.
It's not a target. That's a sort of, you know,
still going to have to wait.
An apparition in the distance.
You're still going to have to wait up to 18 weeks in order to get that elective surgery.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure how, if you were thinking of something, a target, you know, you listen to your voice note from James, who's saying, hang on a moment, where's my money going?
Yeah.
Where's my taxpayers' money going? I'm not sure if James heard that target, he would actually think, oh, you know what, I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait and see, Mike.
Yes.
You know what, I'm going to hold on, because I really want to know, in 2029, am I going to be able to get an operation within an elective surgery, whether a hip replacement or...
and the answer will be no. And it's too far away.
He won't be.
You know,
he won't be that
they said they were going to start fixing the NHS straight away. They said they wouldn't fix it without reforms. Then they gave it a load of money, and then they said they would fix it without reforms. And now they're saying the next target's 5 years away.
Yes.
So which of those things is true?
Well, you can only go on the last claim, can't you, Mike? But also, I think the danger here.
Also, were they lying to us in all the other things? I mean, I don't know.
Well, it does beg a belief. The other thing is, and I think this is a really important thing about the Times, is that many people come across the NHS, not necessarily because they're waiting for a hip replacement or whatever, but they come across the NHS because they go into A&E.
Yeah.
And you can sit in A&E and you can wait for hours.
As people are doing.
In some cases, days, just to see a doctor and turning them into, you know, war zones, because people cannot get seen in a reasonable amount of time and get the treatment that they need. The A&E is the front line of the NHS for many people, especially people who can't now get a GP appointment out of hours, who can't get a GP, you know, go and see a GP at the weekends or wait too long. What are they told to do? You ring up you ring up the non-emergency number, and they just say, oh, go to A&E.
Go to A&E.
Go to A&E.
And wait for hours on end. And it's ridiculous. Meanwhile, the terminally ill may have to pay for assisted suicide. This came out of Pat McFadden's sort of morning round yesterday as well. I've decided to title this particular manoeuvre "Pay As You Go," which I think is quite apt, really, isn't it? He says, basically, the government says they won't be able to pay for it if you want to have your death sort of assisted, in other words, so you'll have to do it privately. So that's not really going to change much of anything, is it?
Well, no, because the only thing is it might reduce the cost. I mean, if you end up paying privately, it might reduce the cost a little bit because you don't have to fly to Switzerland. You can get it done in this country. So you would presume that it would be a bit cheaper. But I think there are many people out there, you know, it would seem, if you're going to introduce...
But that's not how it was sold, was it?
No, it was not. And if this was something... But, of course, this was the idea of a backbench MP called Kem Leadbeater, who is not part of the government, you know, a member of the government, Wes Streeting, actually turned around and warned about the cost implications, and everybody said, oh, he can't speak up because he's got to remain neutral. And actually, if you thought about it, this is the Health Secretary trying to make a point about the fact that this is going to cost some money, and somebody is going to have to find that money from somewhere in order to pay for people to
and there was a sort of
their own life.
Unseemly celebratory aspect to some of the people who got the vote through, and I just thought, you know what, that's really not the look. I don't think that's what people should be doing, like that horrible poster that was put up around Westminster Tube of a woman sort of looking, for all intents and purposes, very happy, saying, you know, the thing I want is not for my loved ones to feel pain. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Let's look at Pat McFadden, though, because he was, as I say, on all the morning shows yesterday, doing the best he could to kind of defend the government's woeful record, which is what it is, there's no doubt about it. He was talking here about Louise Haigh, who resigned on Friday on this very show.
You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker.
He said that when he had someone sitting on his shadow front bench, i.e. Louise Haigh, with a conviction.
Well, I think when he's looking at that clip, he's saying if you're sitting in cabinet, you can't be breaking the law. But it's not...
he gave her a job in cabinet when he knew she had a past conviction.
But it's not the case that anyone who's ever broken the law ever can't serve in Parliament. I'm sure if you looked around Parliament, you'd find more than one. I don't know everybody's
well, then why did she have to... If it's fine, why did she have to go?
As I say, I don't know the details
why do you think?
Every conversation that took place at the end of last week, but clearly between them they came to the view that Louise had to resign.
She did have to resign, and I love the way they now play with words, right? So, yeah, Keir Starmer may well have meant that when he said it, but the inference was you can't be in cabinet if you've broken the law. That was the clear inference, right? Not if you've broken the law while you're in cabinet.
I think it was more than that, Mike. If you listen to the clip, I mean, it's you cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker. You're a lawbreaker. Louise Haigh was a lawbreaker, and then she became a lawbreaker.
And the circumstances of the phone that went missing get more and more murky as the stories sort of come out. You know, because basically the story that we learned on Friday, or because the Times broke it on Thursday night, was that she reported a phone that was stolen, which wasn't stolen.
And And if you listen to Pat McFadden there, and he says, well, he wasn't across the details of all the conversations in government. In another interview,
I bet he was.
In another interview, he said he'd only knew the details of what he'd read in the newspapers. Pat McFadden, by the way, is one of the 4 of the most powerful people in the country. So you go Keir Starmer, you go, well, in Angela Rayner.
Yeah, but McFadden's above Rayner.
But McFadden's McFadden's got sits on more committees, including the National Security
He's
Committee.
also from Blair's former government, so, I mean, he's a very senior politician inside Labour government.
And he has oversight of the entirety of the Whitehall machine from the Cabinet Office, and then the other person, of course, you probably put in there is Rachel Reeves.
Yeah.
But he would absolutely, if he chose to, have detail and be across the detail of all of the conversations and all of
He doesn't look
the
like the
decisions.
sort of man that wouldn't want the detail of every single situation either. He looks like the sort of guy that, when he's in government, wants everything to go through him.
Yes, and
why wouldn't he?
And the only reason you wouldn't want to do that is so that you could go and do an interview and say, well, I don't know the detail because you haven't been told the detail. There was
plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. So there was a story I heard. I forget which minister it was I think it was in the Blair government, who was found themselves in the back of their ministerial car going to a television interview, and there was some particularly damning document that was about to be released. And he got his aide to read the document to him, so at least he could talk about it. And then he goes in the studio, and the interviewer references the document, the said document, and he goes, "Well, I haven't seen it."
Right.
Well, he hasn't seen it.
No.
He's got his aide to read it to him.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it.
But that's disingenuous, isn't it? And that's why people don't like politicians for that very reason, because they're playing with words and they're making out that they haven't seen something that they've clearly seen. They just haven't physically looked at it. Do you know what I mean? Which is mad. Now, what do you make of this? This is something that happened, I think, on was it Friday? Keir Starmer wanders across the divide inside the House of Commons. We've got it here, I think. If you're watching, if you're not watching, here he is. He walks across the divide, which doesn't happen very often. He walks up into the back benches and he goes to say hello to Nigel Farage. Now, it seems like they're having what would look like a pretty genial conversation. What do you think that's all about?
I don't know what it's about, but it was from looking at the footage, and I noticed it. A lot of people noticed it.
Yeah.
It's actually, it goes on for about half a minute, and it's in good nature. And
it appears to be.
It appears to be in good nature. He's obviously asking something of Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
He wants to ask Nigel Farage something of importance.
Yes.
And he's gone across the House of Commons and he's started a conversation with the leader of Reform UK. I actually think, in fairness to Starmer, I think it's quite a good look. There'll be many on his backbenches.
I think he's done it deliberately so that people could see him doing it.
And I think
no question about it.
It'll annoy some of his backbench MPs who'll be like, why are you there fraternising with the enemy and speaking to Nigel Farage?
Because, I mean, if he wanted to, he could have seen Nigel Farage in private.
Yeah, of course he could.
Couldn't he?
Of course he could.
He wouldn't have to do that. But maybe he was asking for money because Elon Musk is making some noises about handing 100 million quid to Nigel Farage.
Get on with Donald Trump,
to get Keir Starmer out of office.
Yeah, and this is a really important story because, I mean, if Musk gives Farage £100 million, that's a game changer in terms of what it could do for Reform UK. Of course, the money would.
There must be presumably laws which govern the funding of political parties, though, aren't there?
There are strict laws, and money can't be foreign money coming into a British political party. So it would have to go through a UK subsidiary or a UK setup of X, based here in the UK, registered at companies.
And would there not be a limit on what that company could then supply with in terms of money?
No, not necessarily.
Right.
No, there's no. But I think more importantly for Nigel Farage is, how does he get his message out there? And if Elon Musk allows Farage, and I think this is already starting to see it, to basically have free reign on X, then that's going to be huge in the run-up to the next election. And we know that Reform UK came second in 99 other seats to Labour. And there is clearly, if Musk senses an opportunity, not just in terms of putting, Nigel Farage making it all the way to Downing Street for the United States, but also in terms of what that would potentially mean for an alliance with the United States with Nigel Farage.
But would you not, in other circumstances, if it was that easy though, wouldn't people have done this before? Like, in order to provide a load of money coming from, say, a foreign company or a foreign entity into a British election? Isn't there some reason for that not to be allowed?
Yeah, there is absolutely a reason, but I mean, you'd have to look at the detail, but if the money comes from a UK company and somebody based in this country, there is nothing to stop that money being donated. We saw with the Conservative Party that they could secure donations from political...
Well, Labour got that money from an offshore fund, didn't they, over in the Caribbean, something like £4 million.
But the money, and that's where they got caught up, but the money has to, at that point of transaction between the political party and the entity that is giving that money, that money has to come from a UK-based individual. Otherwise, it would break the law. And of course, I've no doubt, Mike, that there will be those who would look at this very carefully to make sure that it isn't just money being filtered in through one.
Yeah, because otherwise you might as well get some Russian company to put some money in and do it the same way. Let's get a voice note from Darren on Gregg Wallace.
Morning, Mike. Dan from Norfolk here. There's a little bit off this Gregg Wallace story. There's quite a few people on the BBC who, in the name of comedy, say remarks that are of a sexual nature to people. It's just funny that it's a certain type of person who seems to have been called up on it, that's all. Obviously, I don't know if there's more to the story than there is, but yeah, there's a certain comedian, non-heterosexual, quite often he's making lewd remarks about people who'll have his arms around, around the guests and everything, but maybe he just gets it away with it, it's just something a little bit off.
Well, I think a lot of people will have questions about this. I think the problem is we don't actually know exactly what the limitations of all of this stuff are, and it may well be that there's more to the story than meets the eye. We shall find out in the fullness of time.